Like what? Fear, a prior plan, another relationship, hidden financial stress, a medical issue. I don't know, but his reaction is disproportionate. Her words lodged in my mind. Another relationship. I had been so busy defending myself that I hadn't seriously considered whether Daniel was projecting. That evening, I looked at our recent months through a different lens, his phone suddenly face down on the counter. The late client dinners, the new gym membership he barely used. The way he'd stopped initiating conversations about fertility and started talking instead about contingency planning. Had I missed something obvious? I opened our joint bank app. Most transactions were familiar. Mortgage, utilities, groceries. Then I noticed a series of hotel charges from a business district 40 minutes away. Small, consistent, spread over 3 months. My pulse quickened. Maybe work travel. Maybe conferences, or maybe not. I took screenshots and sent them to Nadia. Her reply came 2 minutes later. Do not confront him yet. Keep collecting records. Wednesday brought the first public humiliation. Daniel's college friend Marcus hosted a small dinner every winter. We'd attended for years. I assumed we wouldn't go this time, but Marcus texted me directly. You coming tonight? Daniel said you're staying with a friend. I stared at the message. He hadn't told them the truth. Something stubborn rose inside me. I was tired of hiding in guest rooms while Daniel curated a version of events. I went. When I arrived, conversation stopped for half a heartbeat. Marcus hugged me too quickly. His wife, Jenna, looked relieved and worried at the same time. Daniel was standing near the kitchen island with a glass of wine. His expression hardened. What are you doing here? Marcus invited me. We should talk privately. No, I said. We should talk honestly. The room went very still. You told people I'm staying with a friend, I continued. You didn't mention that you threw your pregnant wife out of the house because you think she cheated. Jenna's hand flew to her mouth. Elena, Marcus began. I haven't cheated on you, I said, looking only at Daniel. I've never cheated on you. Then a test will prove it, he replied. A test will prove paternity. It won't prove that you destroyed our marriage before asking a single real question. For the first time since the pregnancy test, I saw uncertainty flicker across his face. Just for a second, then he noticed everyone watching and his shoulders squared. Again, this isn't the place. You made it everyone's business when you locked me out. I set my untouched glass on the counter and left. In the parking lot, my phone buzzed. Marcus, I didn't know, he said immediately. Elena, I swear I didn't know. Did he say anything else? Marcus hesitated. He told us you two were separated pending some medical questions. I thought maybe fertility treatment complications or something. He never said cheating. Then quieter. For what it's worth, he's been acting strange for months. Strange how? Distracted, defensive, taking calls outside. I asked if everything was okay, and he said work was complicated. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Did he ever mention another woman? No, but he stopped bringing you up. That was unusual. When I hung up, snow was starting again. I sat in the car and realized something terrifying. I no longer knew whether Daniel's accusation came from ignorance, fear, or guilt. 3 nights later, my phone rang at 2:13 a.m. Daniel, I almost let it go to voicemail. Then instinct 1, hello? Heavy breathing. Not crying, panic. Elena, what happened? I need to ask you something. You woke me up at 2 in the morning for a question? Have you ever heard the name Rebecca Hale? The name meant nothing to me. No, who is that? Silence. Then a sound like he'd sat down hard. She came to the house tonight. Every nerve in my body sharpened. Who came to the house? A woman. Rebecca Hale. She said she needed to speak to both of us. About what? I don't know. Daniel. She said she has information about our fertility treatment. I stopped breathing. What fertility treatment? Another silence long enough that I could hear wind through the phone. The treatment I had 6 months ago, he said quietly. The one I never told you about. My hand went cold around the phone. Outside the apartment window, snow drifted past the streetlights. Inside, the foundation of everything I thought I knew about my marriage cracked open. Because suddenly, the impossible pregnancy wasn't the biggest mystery anymore. For several seconds, I couldn't speak. My mind replayed Daniel's words again and again. The treatment I had 6 months ago. The one I never told you about. The room felt smaller. What treatment? I finally whispered. Daniel exhaled shakily. Can you come over? I almost laughed. A week earlier, he had thrown me into the snow. Now he was asking me to come home. No. Elena? Please. No, tell me over the phone. The silence stretched. I found out I had a medical condition. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. What condition? I was diagnosed with infertility. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? 6 months ago. I sat upright. No. Yes. No. That's impossible. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. A week earlier, he had used that exact word against me. Impossible. Now I was saying it. When were you planning to tell me? I asked. Another painful silence. I wasn't. I closed my eyes. Answer hurt more than the diagnosis. You let me blame myself for years. Elena. You watched me cry every month. His breathing grew uneven. I know. You let me think my body was failing. I know. You let me believe I couldn't give you a child. I know. His voice cracked. For the first time since all this began, I heard genuine pain, but it didn't erase what he'd done. Didn't erase the nights I spent staring at pregnancy, tests, the fertility appointments, the guilt, the shame, all while he already knew. Why? I whispered. A long pause followed. Then came an answer I never expected. Because I was afraid. Afraid of what? That you'd leave. The bitterness in my laugh surprised even me. So instead, you destroyed our marriage yourself. Neither of us spoke. Finally, I asked, who is Rebecca Hale? Daniel swallowed. I think she's connected to the fertility clinic. The words instantly tightened every muscle in my body. What do you mean connected? I don't know. That's not an answer. Because I don't have one. His voice sounded genuinely terrified. She showed up tonight. What exactly did she say? Daniel hesitated. Then, she said the clinic made a mistake. A chill crawled down my spine. What kind of mistake? She wouldn't tell me. My pulse accelerated. What did she want? To talk to both of us. I stared into darkness. Every possibility racing through my mind felt worse than the last. What happens now? I asked. She left a number. Call her. I wanted to speak to you first. I almost snapped back something cruel. Instead, I simply said, call her tomorrow. Then I hung up. The next morning, neither of us slept. At 8:07 a.m., Daniel texted. She agreed to meet us at 10 a.m. at a coffee shop downtown. I arrived early. Daniel arrived 5 minutes later. For the first time since being thrown out, we sat across from each other. Neither of us spoke. He looked terrible, dark circles, unshaven, face bloodshot eyes. The confident man I'd married seemed to have vanished. Then the door opened. A woman entered. Mid-40s. Professional. Clothes, nervous expression, she spotted us immediately and walked over. Elena? She asked. Yes, I'm Rebecca Hale. She sat. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then she folded her hands together. I owe both of you an apology. My stomach dropped. The coffee shop suddenly felt too quiet. Rebecca inhaled deeply. I worked for the fertility clinic. Worked. Past tense? Worked? Daniel asked. I resigned 3 weeks ago. Neither of us interrupted. Rebecca looked miserable. Then she delivered, The sentence that changed everything. There was an internal investigation. I felt my pulse quicken. Investigation into what? Rebecca looked directly at me. Into multiple record discrepancies. Daniel went pale. What kind of discrepancies? Rebecca swallowed, patient. Files. I felt cold. Very cold. The clinic discovered that several records had been incorrectly entered into the system. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed, Rebecca continued. The errors went undetected for years. Daniel's hand tightened around his coffee cup. What errors? Rebecca looked at him, then at me. Then said, your infertility diagnosis may be incorrect. The world stopped. Daniel stared. I stared. Neither of us spoke. Rebecca continued quietly. The test results attached to your file appear to belong to another patient. Daniel blinked. What? There was a mix-up. No, I'm sorry. No. His voice sounded hollow. Rebecca nodded sadly. We verified the data. I watched Daniel's face lose all color. 6 months. 6 months of believing he couldn't father a child. 6 months of shame. 6 months of fear. And then the realization struck me. The accusation, the pregnancy, the divorce threats, everything, all. Because he believed those results. I looked at him. He looked at me. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw complete devastation, not anger, not suspicion, devastation. Because he finally understood what he'd done after Rebecca left. Neither of us moved. The silence between us felt endless. Finally, Daniel spoke. I thought I couldn't have children. I didn't answer. I believed it, still. Nothing. That's why I accused you. I laughed bitterly. You mean that's why you destroyed my life? Pain flashed across his face, but I wasn't finished. You threw me out. I know. You changed the locks. I know. You called lawyers. I know. You told people we were separated. His eyes lowered. I know. I leaned forward. Do you know what it felt like sleeping in a motel while carrying your child? He couldn't answer, because there wasn't one. No explanation big enough. No excuse strong enough. No apology sufficient. For the first time, Daniel looked completely broken. And somehow that didn't make me feel better. It only made me tired. Very tired. You'd think the story would end there. Clinic mistake. Wrong diagnosis. Misunderstanding. Marriage damaged. Case closed, but it wasn't. Not even close. Because 2 days later, Rebecca called again. And this time she sounded frightened. Elena, she said, you need to be careful. My stomach tightened instantly. What happened? Someone has been asking questions. What kind of questions? About you. The fear in her voice was unmistakable. Who? A pause. Then, I don't know. Every alarm bell in my head went off. What are you talking about? Rebecca lowered her voice. The investigation uncovered more than file errors. I sat down immediately. What else did it uncover? Another silence. Then came the sentence that made my blood run cold. There may have been deliberate tampering. My grip tightened around the phone. Deliberate? Someone altered records. The room spun. Why? We don't know. Who? We don't know that either. A long pause. Then Rebecca whispered, but someone wanted certain patients to receive false results. I felt sick. This wasn't an accident anymore. This wasn't negligence. Someone had intentionally changed medical records. And somehow, Daniel's file was one of them. My pulse raced. Are you saying someone targeted us? I don't know. But it's possible. The silence that followed felt endless. Then Rebecca said something even worse. There's one more thing. My stomach dropped. What? The person responsible may still have access to patient information. A cold wave of dread washed over me, because suddenly this wasn't just about our marriage, or the pregnancy, or the clinic. Someone had manipulated lives, destroyed families, changed futures, and now that person knew questions were being asked. The same evening, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single photograph. A photograph of me, taken 3 days earlier, outside Tasha's apartment. On the back, written in black ink, were 5 words: "Stop asking questions." My hands started shaking, because whoever sent it had been watching me, and somewhere out there, they knew something I didn't. Something dangerous enough to threaten a pregnant woman. I immediately called Daniel. When he answered, I heard panic in his voice before I said a word, because he had received an envelope too, and inside his envelope was the exact same message. The same warning, the same threat, the same terrifying implication. Someone didn't want the truth exposed, and for the first time since this nightmare began, Daniel and I were scared of the same thing, but neither of us knew that the biggest secret was still waiting. And when it finally surfaced, it would expose a betrayal far worse than either of us imagined. The photograph sat on my kitchen table all night. I couldn't stop staring at it. Someone had followed me. Someone had watched me. Someone knew where I was staying. And whoever it was wanted me frightened. The worst part wasn't the threat. It was the certainty behind it. Whoever sent that picture knew exactly what they were doing. At 7:12 a.m., Daniel arrived at Tasha's apartment. The moment I opened the door, I saw the same fear on his face that I felt. He held his envelope in one hand. Identical. Same photograph. Same message. Stop asking questions. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Daniel said quietly, "We need to go to the police." I nodded. For the first time in weeks, we agreed on something. The police took the threats seriously, especially after Rebecca Hale came forward. She brought documents, emails, internal reports, audit records. The deeper investigators looked into the fertility clinic, the stranger things became. What started as a record discrepancy quickly turned into something much bigger, much darker. Several patient files had been altered, not dozens, hundreds. Families had received incorrect diagnoses. Healthy couples had been told they were infertile. Infertile patients had received normal results. Medical histories had disappeared. Lab reports had been switched. Years of lives had been affected. Marriages had ended. Relationships had collapsed. People had given up on having children. Others had spent thousands on unnecessary treatments. The damage was enormous. And one question remained: who was responsible? 3 weeks later, investigators got their answer. Her name was Dr. Victoria Langford, one of the clinic's senior administrators. Respected, trusted, highly educated, the last person anyone suspected. For nearly 12 years, she had quietly manipulated patient records. At first, investigators believed it was simple corruption. But the truth was far stranger. Victoria secretly owned financial interests in multiple fertility treatment companies through shell corporations. The more patients believed they had fertility problems, the more money those companies earned, and the more money she made. Every false diagnosis created another customer. Every frightened couple became a source of profit. Investigators estimated millions of dollars had been generated through the scheme. Millions, built on broken hearts, broken marriages, broken dreams, including ours. When I heard the news, I felt physically sick, not because of the money, because of the human cost. Victoria never met most of the people she hurt. She never saw them crying in parking lots, never watched them argue in kitchens, never witnessed relationships falling apart. To her, they were files, numbers, revenue. To us, they were our lives. That evening, Daniel asked to see me. We met at a small park where we'd once walked every Sunday. The winter snow had finally started melting. Everything looked gray, quiet, tired. Kind of how I felt. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then Daniel broke the silence. I don't expect forgiveness. I looked at him. He looked older. Not physically, emotionally. Like the past month had aged him years. You were right, he said. About what? Everything. I didn't answer. He continued. When I got those results 6 months ago, I panicked. His voice shook. I felt broken. I listened. I felt ashamed. He stared at the ground. I couldn't handle it. The pain in his voice sounded genuine. But so did mine when I was sleeping alone in a motel. He swallowed. So I hid it. I nodded slowly. I know. I convinced myself I was protecting you. A bitter smile touched my lips. No. His eyes filled with tears. No, he whispered. I was protecting myself. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he looked directly at me. The day you told me you were pregnant. His voice cracked. I was terrified. I already knew. But hearing it mattered. I believed the diagnosis. He lowered his head. So when you said you were pregnant, my brain immediately went somewhere awful. I stared at him quietly. Instead of trusting my wife. A tear slid down his cheek. I trusted my fear. Those words landed harder than any apology, because they were true, and both of us knew it. Over the next month, Daniel tried, really tried. Not grand gestures, not dramatic speeches. Real effort, therapy, accountability, patience. He accepted responsibility without excuses. He listened. When I was angry, he listened. When I cried, he listened. When I refused to speak to him, he respected it. For the first time, in years, he stopped trying to solve emotions like equations. He simply faced them. Still, trust doesn't magically return, especially after betrayal. Every day I asked myself the same question. Could I ever trust him again? The answer wasn't obvious. Some days felt hopeful, other days felt impossible. Then something happened that changed everything. 7 months later, I went into labor, 3 weeks early. It started at 2:41 a.m. I woke with intense pain and immediately knew. This wasn't practice contractions. This was real. Tasha drove me to the hospital. Daniel arrived 15 minutes later. Breathless, terrified, holding the hospital bag we'd packed together weeks earlier. As nurses rushed around us, I looked at him. The same man who once threw me out. The same man who once doubted me. The same man who had spent months trying to earn his way back. And in that moment, I saw something different. Not perfection, not certainty, humility. The labor lasted 14 exhausting hours. 14 hours of pain, fear, exhaustion. And through all of it, Daniel never left my side. Not once. Then finally, at 4:37 p.m., our daughter arrived. Healthy, beautiful, perfect. The first sound she made was a tiny cry that instantly shattered every remaining wall inside me. I burst into tears. Daniel did too. The nurse placed her in my arms, and suddenly nothing else mattered. Not the clinic, not the investigation, not the threats, not the betrayal, just this tiny human being, our daughter. The little girl who nearly never got the family she deserved. 2 days later, Daniel was holding her in the hospital room when he said something I'll never forget. She saved my life. I smiled softly. That's a lot of pressure for a newborn. He laughed through tears, then shook his head. No. He looked at our daughter. Not because she was born. His voice softened. Because she forced me to become someone better. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he turned to me. And whether you stay married to me or not. I looked up. I'll spend the rest of my life proving I deserved a second chance. That was the moment I knew. Not because everything was fixed. Not because the pain disappeared, but because real change had finally begun. And sometimes that's enough. A year after our daughter's birth, life looked very different. Dr. Victoria Langford was sentenced to prison. Hundreds of affected families received compensation. The fertility clinic underwent major reforms. Rebecca Hale became one of the key witnesses who helped expose the scheme. Tasha became our daughter's honorary aunt. Marisol remained fiercely protective, and Daniel never stopped earning trust, day by day, choice by choice, action by action. Not because I demanded it, because he understood its value. Trust isn't rebuilt through promises. It's rebuilt through consistency. Eventually, our marriage survived. Not because the damage wasn't real, because both of us finally faced reality instead of fear. Looking back now, I sometimes think about that snowy night. The night I stood outside with a suitcase, pregnant, heartbroken, certain. My life was falling apart. What I didn't know then was that some endings are actually beginnings. The truth eventually came out. The lies were exposed, justice arrived, and a little girl entered the world surrounded by people who loved her. Not a perfect family, a real, and that's worth far more. Life lesson: fear can make people believe lies. Pride can make people hide the truth. But trust, honesty, and accountability are what hold relationships together. When you choose fear over trust, you risk losing everything. When you choose truth, even when it's painful, you give love a chance to survive. The strongest relationships aren't the ones that never face storms. They're the ones that learn how to weather them together.